Sonic Unleashed is an amazing game. It's been one of my favorite games ever since I played it all the way back in 2008, and that's exactly the reason why I wanted to make this video. A video where I can just express how I feel about this game and what makes it so special to me. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Alright, what better place to begin than with the opening cutscene? Let me tell you, when I first saw this as a kid, I was genuinely awestruck. It was, simply put, the coolest thing I had ever seen. The sheer spectacle of Sonic showing up out of nowhere and proceeding to lay waste to everything in his path, destroying every robot in sight, dodging bullets and missiles, decimating even entire battleships like it was nothing. It blew me away. Even to this day, this opening sequence holds up really well. Remember, this game came out all the way back in 2008, so this was some pretty impressive stuff. Also, I've often seen people describe this cutscene as being Pixar level quality, and you know what? I'm inclined to agree. Like, just look at this. There are so many things that this opening does right, but of course, its main purpose is to start off the main plot of the game. So, let's fast forward to when Sonic thinks he has Eggman on the ropes and starts to loosen his guard a bit. He gets cocky.
Just give me a chance!
Well, this is new. Showing remorse, Eggman? If you played nice.
Eggman uses that cockiness to his advantage and captures Sonic before electrocuting him and separating the Chaos Emeralds from his body. Then he uses the power from the Chaos Emeralds to shoot a powerful beam into the Earth. This shatters it into multiple pieces, which awakens Dark Gaia, an entity Eggman has been trying to unleash in the hope that he can harness its power and conquer the world. While all of this is happening, we can see that Sonic is going through a transformation that appears to be linked to Dark Gaia in some way. That transformation turns him into this: the Werehog. And with that, Dark Gaia has been released, the emeralds have been drained of their power, the planet is in pieces, and Sonic gets thrown out into space just as the title card settles in. Wow. I really love this opening. It's bold, ambitious, it looks amazing, and I think it sets the tone for the game perfectly. Right after that, we transition into our first in-game cutscene. Sonic's fall to Earth has been halted by some strange green orb. But it stopped his fall really high up, so he still hits the ground pretty hard. When Sonic recovers and takes a look around him, we're introduced to Chip, who is, actually, I have no idea what animal Chip is meant to resemble, but I looked it up and it says he's a small, purple, flying, dog-like creature. It's a bit of a mouthful, but sure, let's go with that. Once the two are introduced, we learn that Chip has amnesia, and it turns out the reason for that is because Sonic fell on him.
Yup, I remember something falling from the sky, and everything just going all white.
Uh-oh. Did I fall on him?
Sonic tells Chip that'll help him get his memory back, and not long after, we see that Sonic is only in his Werehog form during the night, and that he transforms back to his usual self during the day.
was amazing.
After a whole day of not being able to find anyone who knows Chip, the two meet up with Tails, and thanks to his plane, the Tornado 3, they can now travel from continent to continent. The trio then use that plane to rescue Professor Pickle, who is an expert on Dark Gaia. Thanks to him, they learn that Dark Gaia was awoken prematurely and that they still have time to restore the power of the Chaos Emeralds at the 7 Gaia temples scattered across the globe, and that doing that will in turn put the pieces of the planet back in place. And that's the general gist of the story. From here, the lingering threat of Dark Gaia takes a back seat until the final act of the game. So, in the meantime, you'll be traveling the world in order to put it back together, and you'll be experiencing all kinds of different cultures and locations while you do it. Speaking of, this game takes heavy inspiration from real-world locations with both how each area looks and the music that accompanies them. Let's use the first area we get to see as an example. This is Apatos, and it takes heavy inspiration from its real-world counterpart, Greece. If I show a picture of these two places side by side, you can really see just how well the map designers captured the essence of their source material. And if I wanted to show some other examples from the other areas you get to visit throughout the game, it becomes apparent that this level of detail is kept with each new location. They managed to stay very faithful to their source material, while also adding a few of their own artistic touches here and there. This art direction is preserved throughout each stage as well, and I think it goes without saying that they all look fantastic. Since we're on the topic of stages, let's move on to talking about the gameplay.
Here we go!
Sonic Unleashed is comprised of two main gameplay styles. There's the daytime stages, which are high-speed reactionary-based platforming levels, and then there's the nighttime stages, which are slower-paced, combat-focused levels with some platforming thrown into the mix. Let's first talk about the less controversial of the two, the daytime stages. If you're at all familiar with Sonic Colors or Sonic Generations, then you have Sonic Unleashed to thank for it being the first 3D Sonic game to introduce the boosting gameplay. In levels where you alternate between both 2D sections and 3D sections, with the touch of a button, Sonic can activate the boost and start traveling at insanely fast speeds. Not only does the boost make you go fast, but you're also able to barrel through enemies and breakable objects when in this state. The combination of the boost with the rest of Sonic's abilities, like the homing attack, drift, slide, quick step, lightspeed dash, stomp, and wall jump all work together to provide a well-rounded moveset that excels at keeping up that high-speed action that Sonic's most known for. Let me say first off that every single one of these day stages are incredible. Like I've already said, they look amazing, and even though most of the time you'll be boosting through the level as fast as you can go, if you ever choose to stop and have a look around, you'll see that each place has a lot of attention to detail. The level design is also fantastic, and I personally love how it's handled, but with that being said, it's not going to be for everyone. At times, the game can feel pretty punishing as a new player with just how fast everything comes flying at you. But if you're able to react accordingly to all of these things, it feels incredible. The best way I can describe it is that you get a rush, which is funny to say because the first time we saw Sonic use the boost was in a DS game called Sonic Rush. I'm starting to get off topic, but my point is, Sonic Unleashed will throw all of these obstacles and enemies at you at crazy fast speeds, and if you react in time, it feels amazing. But if you don't react in time, it's totally fine. All that'll happen is that you'll learn from it, and you'll be more prepared for that challenge the next time it comes around. And hey, maybe that next time, you'll overcome the obstacle and get that rush I was talking about. And at the end of the day, that's what these levels are all about. You want to style your way past anything the game throws in your way and get from point A to point B as fast as possible. This is only encouraged by the surprisingly good ranking system. I think the ranking system in a lot of games is often overlooked, but in Unleashed, I found myself really appreciating how it was handled. Especially when you compare it to, say, the ranking system in Sonic Generations, which can often feel like a joke with how easy it is to get the highest possible rank, the S rank. Meanwhile, every S rank in the day stages of Unleashed feel earned. And in the likely scenario that you don't get an S rank on your first try, It only helps motivate you to want to play the level again, which leads you to get better at the game, and then you'll start to enjoy the levels even more. Wow, what do you know? Game design, am I right? It helps that these levels were built with replay value in mind. There's plenty of alternate routes to discover, and it should probably go without saying that they can be immensely satisfying to pull off. And even more satisfying when you go through a ton of them in the same level and get that coveted perfect run. In most cases, these daytime levels are the part of the game that everyone likes. And you can tell it was well received because Sega ended up using the same boost gameplay for a good few of their future games. With one weird exception in between, but that's besides the point. Look, I could go on and on about how much I love this half of the game, but I think it's time for me to move on to the less well received half of Sonic Unleashed. The nighttime stages. The mere concept of Sonic turning into a werehog was bound to raise some eyebrows. And for the record, I don't blame these people for their initial reactions. I also think the idea of turning Sonic into a werehog during the night is a dumb idea. Especially when you consider that this game was coming right off the heels of Sonic 06. And it definitely didn't help that Sonic lost his trademark speed while in this form, which is no big deal. It's just the main thing that the character's known for! It's not all bad though. In exchange for his speed, Sonic gained a ton of strength. And, stretchy arms? Yeah, this part's never explained, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but with that being said, I'm glad that they did it, because the stretchy arms make the combat and the platforming a whole lot more interesting than they would have been without them. In terms of the Werehog's moveset, he has swipe moves for area of effect, punch moves for more direct hits, he can pick up enemies and throw them, he has a shield, and he has an unleashed meter that fills up as you kill enemies or break objects, and when full, you can activate it to gain increased damage, speed, attack speed, and you also don't take damage while you're in this state. Aside from the executions, and the numerous amount of combos that the Werehog can pull off, you can also use the stretchy arms to grab onto ledges, poles, and even swing from horizontal poles. That's the general moveset out of the way, so let's move on to talking about the actual gameplay of the Werehog. I've already said that this part of the game wasn't received as well as its counterpart, but at least for me, I actually like the nighttime stages. So that's exactly why I want to go over people's biggest gripes with the Werehog's gameplay, and then go over why I didn't run into those same issues. From what I gathered, the most common complaints are that the levels are too long, the combat is too repetitive, and that it feels too slow-paced to be in a Sonic game. I want to tackle each of these points individually, so let's start with the levels being too long. It's true that the Werehog levels are a lot longer than their counterpart, there's no denying that. But I don't have a problem with them being longer, and to explain why, I need to talk about a big part of the progression in Sonic Unleashed, the Sun and Moon medals. To sum it up, as you progress through the game, stages will start requiring Sun and Moon medals for the day stages and the night stages respectively. You start needing more and more as you go through the game, and it's essentially inevitable that your progress is halted at least one time. You get more Moon medals from day stages, and you get more Sun medals from night stages, but there's also more medals to collect overall in the night stages. The biggest problem with the system being used for progression is that they aren't handled the best in the day stages. Sure, you'll find some from just playing the level, but these stages aren't built for backtracking, so if you miss one, it can be pretty awkward to go back and get it. It's also very common to miss a lot of medals on a first playthrough. You're doing pretty good if you get close to half. I think it's fair to say that the Sun and Moon medals suits the nighttime stages a whole lot better. The slower pacing of these levels make it so that taking your time and exploring for medals feels a whole lot more natural. Playing like this is bound to extend the level length though, which is where I think a lot of the complaints of the levels being too long come from. But at least in my experience, the levels were never too long for me to complain about. They average from 10 to 15 minutes on my first playthrough, and to me that level length is totally fine. But just to see what it would be like, I tried going through each of the levels without looking for medals, and they become significantly shorter. If Unleashed ever gets a remaster, Sega should think about getting rid of the medals being mandatory to progress through the game. That way people like me who like exploring the levels can keep taking their time and finding the collectibles, while the people who don't like the length of the stages can just run through them without needing to worry about slowing down. Okay, so, next problem, the combat being too repetitive. This is yet another problem I never ran into, but that all boils down to how you play the game and the choices you make. Here's what I mean by that. This game has an experience system, and taking a look at the upgrades for the Werehog, there's a section called Combat. This section unlocks lots of new combos and moves that you could perform during fights. These moves will help add variety to the combat to a decent amount. Sounds good, right? Well, the problem is that your basic attacks are fairly effective throughout the game. Even if the unlocked moves do more damage and have more utility, it's completely viable to just put most of your experience points into the strength section rather than combat, and then just stick with the basic combos you've had since the start of the game. But since I didn't do that, the combat being too repetitive wasn't a problem for me. There's plenty of cool things you can do in fights, as well as lots of different combos you can pull off. You can pick up enemies and spin them around or slam them into the ground. There's loads of flashy combos as well. My favorites being the ones that send enemies into the air for aerial combos like this one. Or this one. Or this one. That's just a small example of moves I find fun to pull off, but of course there's a ton more. In my eyes, there's loads of avenues to have fun combat as the Werehog, but it's all preference, so some people are gonna like the combat and some aren't. The last main complaint I wanted to go over was the Werehog stages feeling too slow paced for a Sonic game. I can see where this point is coming from. There's a whole lot of people who, when playing a Sonic game, just want to go fast. It's understandable, it is the thing Sonic's most known for. But to those people who think the Werehog's gameplay is too slow for a Sonic game, my advice is to try and open your mind. Don't let the gameplay drag you down just because it isn't as fast as the day stages, and try to enjoy the Werehog gameplay for what it is. This way of thinking might not work for everyone, but it worked for me, which is why I'm mentioning it. That wraps up the most common complaints that I see from the Werehog. That's not to say that there aren't any other issues or complaints, like the tightrope sections, or the battle theme interrupting the amazing music from these stages every single time you even so much as look at an enemy. But complaints aside, I like the Werehog. Do I prefer the day stages? Yeah, but the Werehog never detracted from my overall experience with the game. If anything, I'd say it added to the experience. Alright, that's almost everything I wanted to talk about with the daytime and the nighttime gameplay. The only things I didn't touch on were the additional stages and the boss fights, but I'll talk about them both now. Starting with the boss fights, in the daytime bosses, you'll be traveling just as fast as you were in the levels. They also switch between 3D and 2D gameplay, where you'll have to react to and dodge incoming projectiles and attacks to look for an opening where you can strike with either a homing attack or a boost. I don't really have a whole lot more to say about these bosses besides them all being pretty good and having some cool moments, so I'll leave you with this clip because being able to boost into this boss multiple times while it's tumbling is something that I'll never get tired of doing. As for the nighttime bosses, they're each built around a unique mechanic that you have to utilize in order to damage the boss. It ranges from using water to put out fires surrounding the boss, to freezing the boss so that you can attack its weak point, and then to pushing boxes.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yeah, this boss fight isn't my favorite, but these other two ones are cool. Especially the Phoenix fight, because there are some brutal quick time events in it. The other things I wanted to talk about were the additional stages. This game has both extra stages that are in the base game and DLC stages that you can gain access to for a small price. The regular additional stages are alright. They serve as an extra way to get a few sun and moon medals while also adding some bonus stages for you to try out. I like the daytime version of these levels. Some are better than others, but they're all fine at being short but sweet levels that you can have some quick fun with. The Werehog versions of these levels are another story, and I'm not really a fan of these. I'm glad that they exist as the option to get more sun and moon medals, and also just for the sake of having more stages, but at least for me, they kinda miss the mark on what I like about the Werehog's gameplay. As for the DLC stages, I loved playing through these. I think these serve really well specifically as post-game content. I say that because you don't receive any sun and moon medals from these stages, and on top of that, they're a lot harder than the typical daytime or nighttime stage. The daytime stages dial up the intensity of these levels even higher than the main stages, and throw just about everything they can at you. These are bound to scare people away thanks to their difficulty, but that's why I think they work so great as post-game content. Most of the DLC packs feature 4 daytime levels, with the total number being 26 DLC daytime stages for you to try out. Each location gets one hard mode version of the main level from that area, so that makes 18 completely new levels. But with how different the level layout and the difficulty is for the hard mode stages, they can honestly sometimes feel like new stages as well. Like I already said, I loved playing through these. They test your reaction speed to the absolute limit, and they also come paired with a lot of replay value if you'd like to revisit them and try to get a better rank. As for the Werehog stages, even though the additional levels in the base game for the Werehog disappointed me, the DLC Werehog stages completely made up for that. These are all really good in my eyes. There's less of the DLC nighttime stages than daytime, with there only being 2 per location to make 16 total. But this is 16 original stages, with none of them being a hard mode like some of the daytime DLC stages. There are a few reasons why I really like these levels. First off, the fact that these levels contain no sun and moon medals allows for these levels to be a lot more focused on combat and platforming rather than exploration. I do like the exploration aspect of the main Werehog levels, but thanks to these DLC stages, you get to experience both sides of that coin. The combat is great because even with a highly leveled up Werehog, you don't just mow through enemies in the way that you would if you tried to replay the main levels from those same areas. And the platforming is good because, well, it's just good. I highly recommend anyone who enjoyed the base game of Sonic Unleashed to get these DLC packs because €10 total for 26 more day stages and 16 more night stages is a really good deal. With that out of the way, I finally talked about everything I wanted to regarding these two gameplay styles. As for my closing thoughts on them, I think they're both great in very different ways. The boosting gameplay will always be something I enjoy when handled correctly, and the Werehog gameplay, while unorthodox for a Sonic game, was a fun time for me. And even though the two styles are so different, I think the contrasting gameplays end up complementing each other. That's the gameplay section of this video done with, so let's move on to the next part of the video. For this part of the video, I want to talk about all the things outside of the gameplay that I love about this game. I've already mentioned a few of these things, but there's no harm in going a little bit more in depth, right? Let's start by going back to the locations you get to visit throughout the game. I think these mini hub worlds are great. They're generally pretty small, so you're not going to get lost, but you still get to do a little bit of exploring if you'd like to look around for a few sun and moon medals, or if you want to just walk around and interact with the people in the area. The designs for these people are great, and the cartoony look is a big step up from the more realistic approach with the game that came before Unleashed, Sonic 06. Now the humans look a lot less out of place when standing beside Sonic. You can interact with most of these people too, and they all have their own unique dialogue, with even some having mini storylines. I know this kind of thing isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I appreciate details like this because it helps each area feel more alive. You know what else helps these areas feel more alive? The music. I mentioned earlier that this game has an incredible soundtrack, and I doubt anyone's surprised. Sonic games tend to have a reputation for that kind of thing. But there's something really special about how Unleashed handles its music, and a lot of it is to do with the theming of the tracks. Each track is themed to suit their respective area, and they each take inspiration from the real-life places they were based on with some of their instrument choices. The music also changes in tone based on what time of day it is, which means there's a day and a night track for both the stages and the hub worlds. You've already been hearing the soundtrack as I've been using it throughout this video as the background music, but I'm going to stop talking for a little bit and let you appreciate just how good these tracks sound. It really is an outstanding soundtrack, and I'd play all the music tracks from the game if I could, but that would make this video a lot longer than it needs to be, so let's move on to the graphics engine. Basically, Sonic Unleashed uses a little thing called the Hedgehog Engine, and this engine is a huge part of the reason as to why the game looks as good as it does. It provides something called global illumination. This makes it so that when a source of light is cast in an area, that same light reflects off of every object in that location. Without global illumination, the areas look quite bland, but when the global illumination is implemented and then added on top of those areas, they look much more alive. These effects apply to Sonic as well, so if he happens to be next to something pink, that light will reflect onto him in a natural way. My favorite place to show an example of this lighting engine in action is in this area here. You can see when Sonic is standing under this wooden structure that the lighting around him is brown. Then when he steps out into the light, the lighting is white. And then finally when he steps under this foliage, the lighting becomes green. Here's a closer look so that you can easily tell the difference. It's a bit jarring comparing how incredible Sonic Unleashed looks compared to yet again Sonic 06, which only released 2 years before Sonic Unleashed. The art style of course plays a big part in that, but the lighting especially is obscenely improved thanks to the Hedgehog Engine, which was the reason why I wanted to take this time to showcase and appreciate just how well done it was, especially for the time it was made, because it's still weird to me how good this game looks for a game made in 2008. Moving on though, let's take a brief look at the cutscenes, which are all great. Characters are expressive and there's plenty of moments that I think are really good. Take this cutscene with Eggman for an example.
I'm having a bad enough day as it is. First that professor runs off with the Gaia manuscripts, and now the planet's coming back together.
That, Doctor, is the result of the power of the Chaos Emeralds, which you discarded along with Sonic. Ergo, another repercussion of your hasty actions.
Quiet, you junk heap! That was all part of my plan, part of the big picture. Where's the fun in having my plans succeed without any challenge?
While we're here talking about the cutscenes, I want to take a moment to talk about Chip's character. I like Chip, but he can be hit or miss at times. He's often there to be the comic relief, but the jokes don't always land, which can lead to some people finding him annoying. As for me, I think he's an endearing character. You spend almost the entire game with him, and when his personality shines, I can't help but like him. Moving on from Chip to Sonic though, I have to mention that in this game, Sonic's personality is great. His attitude, while still present, is toned down a bit, and combine that with his less jokey nature and his strong sense of doing what's right, and it helps this interpretation of Sonic feel like a more mature version of what we have seen before. I can't speak for everyone, but I really like this interpretation of Sonic, and I think it's much better than anything we've gotten from the games that followed. Well, actually there is one exception, but I'm not going to get into that now. Okay, now that I've covered the things that I wanted to cover for this section of the video, I think it's about time we move on to the final act of the game. But before we move on to the actual final act of the game, I want to quickly go over what happens before we get there to better explain what's going on. At this stage in the story, Sonic and Chip have restored the power of 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and in turn, they've almost fully restored the planet. It's during the 6th emerald getting restored that Chip finally regains his memory and remembers that he is Light Gaia, the opposer to Dark Gaia. We learn that every million or so years, Dark Gaia rises up and destroys the world, and it's always been up to him to put it back together. Once he learns this, he actually tries to leave and fight Dark Gaia alone, but of course Sonic isn't going to let that happen.
Whoa, what?
Where do you think you're off to all by yourself?
What? But my memory is back now, and, well, from here on out, it's my responsibility, so, I mean, there's no reason for you to come along, so I should just...
Do I need a reason to want to help out a friend?
Thanks, Sonic.
The two set course for the final continent, only to find that Eggman has built an entire fortress over the final Gaia temple. That fortress being the one and only Eggmanland. For those who don't know, Eggmanland for a while at this point had been Eggman's final goal. It was first mentioned in the games back in 1999 in Sonic Adventure 1, and here, 9 years later, he's finally done it. He's created one of, if not the hardest level in the Sonic franchise. This level is rough on a first playthrough, but I absolutely love it. One of the coolest things about it is that it's the only level in the game to have you alternate between both daytime and nighttime Sonic mid-level. And you better be on your A game with both of these gameplay styles because this level will really test your skills as a player. Because of just how brutal this level is, it's not uncommon for players to take a really long time beating this stage on a first playthrough. I'll be honest and say that on my first playthrough, it took me 50 whole minutes. Yeah. But even though that length sounds awful on paper, I actually really enjoyed the challenge that the stage had to offer. It just makes it all the more satisfying when you finally finish it and that sense of accomplishment washes over you. But with all the left hooks that Eggmanland throws at you, I'm really not surprised that this level is so divisive among people regarding whether it's actually good or not. Either way, once you've made your way through the Crimson Carnival of Eggmanland, Sonic and Chip make their way inside the final Gaia temple and restore the power to the last Chaos Emerald. This brings the final piece of the planet back in place. And that's the end of the story. From here, Sonic and Chip go home and have a well-deserved rest. Who am I kidding? We all knew there'd be a boss fight. Eggman has harnessed some of the power from Dark Gaia to create this machine, the Egg Dragoon. I guess in-game it's technically called
The Ultra Hyper Prototype 1!
but I'm sorry, I'm not gonna call it that. The Egg Dragoon destroys the floor Sonic and Chip are standing on and sends them falling down a crevice. It's from here that the actual boss fight ensues. It takes place on a floating platform falling straight towards the Earth's core, and for the record, this is a really cool fight. The setting is obviously amazing, but one of my favorite parts about the fight is that you get a sense for just how desperate Eggman is. It's almost as if he's lost it and the only thing he cares about is killing Sonic once and for all.
Out of my sight! Jeez, Eggman! Simmer down! Out of my sight! No!
Of course, he kind of fails at the whole killing Sonic thing, but he does succeed in bringing Sonic and Chip right into the Earth's core, where none other than Dark Gaia is there waiting for them. But before any actual fight can start, Dark Gaia drains the dark energy from Sonic and essentially gets rid of the Werehog forever. The Werehog being drained leaves Sonic in a pretty destroyed state, and Chip has to use his powers as Light Gaia to save them. He brings all the 7 Gaia temples from across the globe and assembles them to form the Gaia Colossus. From here the boss fight begins. You start a while away from Dark Gaia and you have to try and get close while dodging or blocking the attacks coming at you. Once you reach Dark Gaia, there will be a few QuickTime events before you switch to playing as Sonic and run along the body of the Gaia Colossus so that you can get right up close to Dark Gaia and start attacking one of its eyes. You repeat this 3 times until you've destroyed the 3 eyes on Dark Gaia's head, which will be the end of the boss fight. This boss fight is okay. I love the presentation and the idea behind the fight, but it just takes way too long to get close to Dark Gaia during these segments, and repeating it 3 times over so that you can destroy each eye doesn't help either. The Sonic segments are great though, even if they're really short, and I love the idea of racing against the clock to get to Dark Gaia in time to attack it. This is only part 1 of the boss fight though, and right after you think you've defeated Dark Gaia, it awakens into a more powerful version of itself. Perfect Dark Gaia. During this transformation, the final piece of the planet is lifted back up again and the world begins to be plunged into darkness. Meanwhile, Sonic gets ready to deal with Dark Gaia once and for all by using the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds to transform into Super Sonic for the true final boss fight. In this fight, once you've flown up to Dark Gaia, the bulk of the fight will be spent taking out the shield surrounding Dark Gaia so that you can then attack it directly through a bunch of QuickTime events. It's a decent fight, nothing to write home about mechanics wise, but it's the atmosphere and the music that really made me love this boss fight. Once you've broken the barrier and have gotten through the QTEs, Sonic finishes it off by charging straight through Dark Gaia's eye. The fight may be over, but Sonic is wrecked after it, and he passes out from exhaustion. Chip saves him from falling into the lava, and after a brief goodbye, he throws Sonic out of the core just as the last piece of the Earth closes again and the Earth is fully restored. Across the globe, we can see all the people from all the places we visited cheering as the darkness from Dark Gaia is dispelled. And when we cut back to Sonic, we see him crash landing in the exact same spot as the start of the game. The difference this time is that Chip isn't here anymore, and instead, all that's left is his bracelet for Sonic to remember him by. And that right there is the ending of Sonic Unleashed. Thank you so much to anyone and everyone who stuck around to watch this video. It's a video I've wanted to make for a while now, and the main reason for that is because I think this game is a whole lot better than a lot of people give it credit for. Believe it or not, this game was met with very mixed reviews when it was originally released. A lot of that was probably to do with the game coming straight after Sonic 06, and also the fact that the Werehog is such a strange idea. But I hope that through watching this video, you can see why I think so highly of Unleashed. It really is one of my favorite games, and sure, nostalgia probably plays a part in that, but I think the game stands very well on its own. It's such a shame that the game is stuck on the Xbox 360 and PS3, and I know it's playable through backwards compatibility, but I really hope that we can someday get a remaster or even a port of the game to modern hardware, because it honestly deserves it.